Welcome again to another rendition of WTF Interviews. My name is Sir Royce Briales, and I'm with my prestigious co-host, Dr. Raheem Young. How's it going, brother?
I'm doing well. How things on your end?
Man, pretty good, man. It's starting to snow out here in Chicago. I'm not looking forward to this winter, but, buckle down, man. Beard gang. So I got my beard for that. It's an extra scarf. But anyway, I also have a special guest to announce. We have Terrance Bean on the line. How's it going, Terrance?
Man, it's going great. It's great to be here with you, brother, man. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, no problem. So tell us a little bit about yourself. So how many kids you got? What are the ages? And also, what do you do for a living or for a purpose, if you will?
Well, man, I'm out here in Houston, Texas, a suburb of Houston called Humble, Texas, which is just north of Houston. And I'm in my 23rd year of being in telecommunication sales. I spent about 20 years with AT&T. I'm now with T-Mobile in my second year. So that's what I do for a vocation, but I also do youth coaching and youth mentorship as a part of my purpose outside of coaching, outside of work. So I used to coach track 13 years in the community, and then also coaching football and those type of things, and part of Big Brothers and Big Sisters. So I've been in their 2.0 mentor program online, and then also having a little in my community that I interact with twice a month. So I look forward to all those opportunities to mentor as well. I have four kids, two sons that are 23 and 18. Both are playing college football right now. One is at Baylor as a freshman, and one is he's graduated from Kansas University, and he's actually playing an additional year at Texas A&M Kingsville. So, we'll follow them every weekend doing their sports and everything here in the fall season. I also have two daughters. My one daughter graduated from Northwestern State University in North Louisiana, where that's also my alma mater. She played volleyball there, and she just graduated and started her first year working. So she's becoming that new adult. And then my last girl is a 14-year-old. She's a freshman in high school, and she's a volleyball player in club volleyball. So we're very much the sports family, very much the believers family. We spend a lot of time together at church, a lot of time together in sports. And so that's it. That's who I am in a nutshell.
That's cool, man. How so what was that like, raising athletes? Like high level athletes at that?
It was fun, man. It was interesting. It also when I look back on it, I recognize areas where I had to balance and level set, and do some things as a athlete myself to make sure that the dad and the athlete and the dad and the coach part was balanced out. Because when I first started out, I was raw and all that. So a couple extra things about myself. I was a track and field athlete in college. I was a 3-time All-American in track and field, and I tried out for the Olympics in '96 when it was stateside here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I didn't make the team, but I was a finalist, and it was a great experience. And so I'm very much the football, basketball, track, and all that, So when I started having little kids and start escorting them through that experience, I had to balance out the whole between the coach and dad, So my older kids got the tougher version, and my younger kids kind of, got a better balanced dad. But it was fun because the things we did, we were able to do them all as a family. When I coached track, everyone was together on Saturday. We did it as a family. When I coached football, my boys played, my girls cheerleaded. So it was, we just all did most of those things as a family. So that was a cool part about it. That was a good thing.
So tell me about your experience being a dad. So from the first time you heard that you're about to be a dad to number 4 coming, like what was the biggest difference in those experiences?
And that's a fantastic question, because for my first time understanding that I would be a dad or even thinking about being a dad was fear. And it was an overwhelming fear because I came out of an abusive relationship with my dad. So I lived with my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, I guess you will. I had a mother and father, but they just weren't together. And my dad was the provider, but I didn't live with him. I had siblings, and he had a family in a different place. And then my mom was separate. So I came out of a tough situation. So it was all about trying to provide a better situation for my family, but I didn't know if I had the skill set to do that. So my first indication was fear. I don't want to be my dad. How am I going to do this? How am I going to be better? As I became, for my first son and through the evolution of my other kids, as a dad, I had to figure it out. I had to make adjustments and do things. I had to purposely go and increase my skills as a dad. I have a thing in my head that I call the parental bag. And when my dad reached in his parental bag, he had, ass whooping. That's the thing that he had, and that was it, And he got instantaneous results, so he never expanded his bag. As me, I wanted to have prayer. I wanted to have timeout. I wanted to have conversation. I wanted to have teachable moments. I wanted to have, just other things that I can manage my kids with, and that I can have a better relationship with my kids other than just raw disciplinary action. So I had to go and learn a lot of those things because I didn't understand it. I had to go and learn more about affection and those things and I'm still not good at that, but I didn't get that affection and stuff from my dad or from my parents. So I was missing those type of things. And so I had to go be purposeful about being more educated, and I had to be more purposeful about offering grace to my kids and being able to expand how I manage and handle my kids versus just being a disciplinarian. So that was how I evolved with being more graceful. Offering more grace, being more understanding, utilizing a wider range of skills other than just anger and corporal punishment, I guess, if you will, as I evolved, along the line of my kids.
Did you ever talk to your dad about the way that he raised you, or his way of going about disciplining you?
Yeah, I did. Later in life, my dad was hard man for a while. And so during my older teen years and younger adult years where I was off to college and all that, I did that experience all on my own. So it was just a breath of fresh air to be away from my parents or to be away from my dad and other people. I was literally walking through that stage of life on my own, other than some friends and and extended family. But later on in life, I got a chance to talk to him and I got a chance to understand more. But it was only when I started to look beyond my dad or to start to understand more about, I asked myself the question one day, where did this start? This couldn't have just started with him. What did he go through that caused him to be the man that he is? And maybe if I can understand him better, I can be able to offer grace to him, and I can be able to recognize, there's something more that I'm missing, and that we can start reconciling with each other. And that's when I started thinking of things more about generational curses, about how dysfunction impacts a person or a man, and how he manages his family or how he responds and those type of things. As a younger man, as a younger teenager, a younger adult, I didn't understand those things. As I started to understand more about them, and I saw my dad from a different view, then I was able to communicate with him. I was able to forgive him. I was able to have a conversation with him. And I was hopeful that he could have a relationship with his grandkids that he didn't have with me, and maybe have a second chance at some of those things. But unfortunately, he passed away before he was really able to step into some of those things. But I can say about 6 months before him passing, we reconciled our relationship. I was able to see him and help him be saved and have a different change so that he could, leave this life different than the way he operated in it. So that was a blessing.
That's good.
Are you the only child, or did you have your siblings?
It's funny because I grew up like I was an only child because I lived with my grandmother. We lived kind of like in the hood, if you will. My dad was a blue collar worker, but my dad earned fairly well because of the type of work he did. He was a longshoreman, and in the Houston area at the port, there's always good work for men at the Port of Houston. So he was always made good money. So he lived out in the area where I live now, which was considered a nicer area back then. Not even a lot of Black families, but he was there with his family, and he had 2 sons and a daughter. So even though I had 3 other siblings, then we have a great relationship now. We started really learning each other more as adults and finding more about each other as adults or young adults. But growing up, we didn't spend much time around each other because I literally grew up separate from them. So I grew up as if I was an only child, even though I had siblings in other places. But now I'm very much, my siblings and I are very much connected. We all pretty much live, at least all of us except one, we live pretty much in the same area.
What lessons did your, like, growing up with your grandmother provide you about being a dad? Or did you get anything from your grandmother as far as wisdom as, as being a dad?
Man, I got all the game from my grandmother, but I don't know how
Okay.
much necessarily about a dad. But people always said, even as a young guy, I was an old soul, and sometimes they say that about people who grew up under their grandparents. Grandmother taught me about, how to cook and how to do stuff for yourself, how to take care of yourself. She taught me my first introduction to spirituality, where she would take me to church all the time. She helped me understand about having a relationship with God. Grandma showed me some of the first unconditional love, because she was in her 60s when I was in my single digit age, and they were sacrificing to take care of me and doing things I needed. And so when I look back on that, I understood that sacrificial love and that unconditional love that she provided. But she talked the old game. She was born in 1917. So she talked about things she walked through and segregation and things she walked through and parenting and, just all kind of things, man. And I held my grandmother in such a high esteem, and I only knew her as an elder, that as I was doing some of that soul searching about my dad that I mentioned, I had to find out the tough way that grandma and grandpa wasn't always older. They were younger. And when they were younger, they had some lifestyles and some characteristics and some things that added into the trauma that my dad experienced, which i.e. made him, who he was. So I had to do a tough swallow and understand how grandma and grandpa was when they were a little younger, like the club, like to play poker, like to do things or whatever. And they had 10 kids, and the kids were growing up, and sometimes kids were having to fend for themselves, or just different things. It's a different story, but I had to see them in a different light. But before that, and even now, my grandma was golden. Grandma was like untouchable, but she was the person that took me in and loved me and protected me. And she taught me the game. She taught me everything I needed to know to be, just those little grandma things, right? Man, you make your bed hard, you're gonna lay in it. She taught me little stuff like that I had no idea. What does that mean? Like now I know 100% what that means, So don't burn your bridges and all that kind of stuff. She just taught me so much game that helped me, to this day. She still speaks to me to this day, and she's been gone a long time.
So, so do you feel like your involvement with like mentoring and being a part of Big Brother, Big Sister, does that coincide with like things that you went through growing up?
I just feel like I have something to offer, with sometimes from a testimony standpoint, sometimes it's just offering something that I know is not out there in abundance when it comes to dealing with kids and those type of things, especially around sports. My objectives for coaching kids and my objectives for doing things are different than the average person. I'm not trying to win Super Bowls or win whatever. I'm trying to empower. My coaching is 2 words: fun and fundamentals. So I'm trying to do certain things that I feel like are missing from the mentality of kids and from whatever. I used to tell guys that dealt with my sons, hey, I'm not trying to build monsters. I want men. I don't want somebody that's so robotic and monstrous and dynamic and overwhelming in football that he can't be a husband later on in life. He can't be a mentor because he doesn't have balance. So I just always understood a little bit about balance and about certain things, and I wanted to try to bring that to other people in the way that I could. I just felt like that was a part of my purpose. And so even though I felt like from a vocational standpoint, I'm not working in my purpose, it was beneficial for me to be able to, after work, come home and feel like I'm doing something that's purpose driven and something that's giving back. And it just felt natural. So that was my reasoning for doing that, and for also, continuing to do it in some form factor. I'm not currently coaching right now because I stepped back just to focus more on the critical time in my own kids. I have sacrificed some of my own kids' moments because of me coaching the larger group of kids and all those type of things. So when I was trying to get my sons ready for college and that, I stepped back a little bit so I could offer that focus to my own home, to my own kids, and also take a little break because I was getting a little overloaded. But I still always have a hand in something somewhere where I can help kids. And another thing I love to do is help young men get into college. So where parents don't understand the whole recruiting process and some of that stuff, I try to help with that as well.
Okay. So earlier you said something just a few minutes ago that kind of stuck with me a little bit. And you said when you were describing your grandmother, you said that she protected you.
Right.
And that's something I've been thinking about, like in society, especially as men, but especially as Black men. Mm-hmm. A lot of times we don't get protected.
Right.
So can you talk about that a little bit more and like how the impact that had on you?
Yeah, I think the opposite of that, what you just said, is what I heard someone use a term, the demasculinization of the man, right? Yeah. And some of us grew up in environments where, when the woman was over us, we kept getting spanked and brutalized or whatever. And some of that was because we were the lasting image of the father that had done something to the lady or to the mom or whoever, and you were taking the short end of that. So my grandmother, being a grandmother, where my dad was, the angry person sometimes, or where my mom was the abandoned, I felt abandoned from my mom and abused by my dad. So she was the balancing force between that. She didn't allow me to endure too much on one side where she could control it, and not on the other side where she could control it. So I just knew I had a safe place. I knew I had provision. I knew I had the things I needed. And it was a place where I can relax and kind of chill and not be on edge because, in my environment, I would have to be there with one parent versus the other. So she was very protective in that manner. Things she would say, she'd fight for you. She'd argue at somebody about you. And I didn't realize it then, but that's important. It's just as important as you having a male son saying, man, I'm proud of you. Hey, man, that was awesome. That was great. Man, I love you. I missed some of those opportunities before, but I recognize how impactful they are. Right now, I can watch a movie today and see a mom just like going hard for her son, just like hugging him or doing something. And I still, at 46 years old, feel the impact of that abandonment because I'm like, hey, I didn't get that. I missed that, So some of the things I was missing, I did get that from my grandmother. And I did feel like she was very defensive over me. And it felt good, to have someone like standing up for you and defending you like that.
So my question to you is in regards to your kids. So the similarities between us is that we all have sons and daughters on this call. Was there a difference between your approach between how you, parented your sons versus your daughters, or was it pretty much the same across the board?
Now, if I'm being honest, I would say it was probably a difference. I'm sure it was a difference because, and again, there was a whole evolution of me in parenting and how I started out versus, where I am now. So my wife has definitely pointed out some places where, hey, you did that with the boys, or you told the boys that, but you wouldn't have told the girls that, or vice versa, right? So football was always one thing that was different than whatever sports my girls were in, either volleyball or track and field. Definitely when it came to like the girls versus the boys, and like I tried. Everyone had to be 16 years old before they dated. Whether they actually did it or not, that was the rule, and I tried to manage the same way accordingly. But yeah, that was probably some places where I was more overprotective of my daughters, or I was harder on my sons, in a certain instance. But I started learning, and it's weird. I'm pretty sure everybody on this call with kids can attest. It's almost amazing to see that kids that come from the same parents in the same home are completely different. You can have 3 or 4 kids and they all be completely different. It's like were you raised in literally the same home, And so my older son struggled with ADHD and anxiety, and I started recognizing he needs something different from me, in terms of what parenting looks like. I have some daughters that their academics and all that stuff, you don't even have to ask them a question. They're on top of it, they're with it. And then, but in another area of life, you might have to parent them differently in other social areas or whatever the case may be. So I started to learn more to individualize my relationships with my kids. I'm very purposeful in taking one of my kids somewhere to lunch or one of my kids somewhere to dinner so I can have that one-on-one time with them. And it's not always just the family of 6 together, so that, we can get that individuality and that, that one-on-one conversation. So I would probably say, and honestly, I did to a certain degree, but my intention is to be as level as I can with all the kids, but offer them the specific things that they need, because what I learned in coaching is there's so many kids that are different. Back in the older days, you'd have a kid and that kid is just bad. Well, now that kid might just have an attention deficit, or that kid might just have some struggles at home, or the kid might just have some other thing that they're dealing with that hadn't been identified yet. So we have to have the grace and the ability to understand, and then we as the adults have to be flexible enough to help them and to move and flex where they can. That's the biggest thing that was missing for me, and I think other people, from how we grew up and how we were parented back in the day to today. We had to make all the adjustments. The parents said, "Do this." I remember being told, "You ain't got no wants." I don't eat fish today, but I had to eat fish when I was growing up because parents were like, "No, you eat fish, eat it." So now sometimes there are some moments our kids can't pivot, they can't flex, they don't have the ability to do this yet. And as parents, we have to have the flexibility and the grace to be able to do that for them and bring them along. I remember. And we have to ask ourselves this question sometimes. Everyone knows that moment in the store where some kid freaks out in the store, right? They have a temper tantrum. And so back in the day, I remember you get tore up doing that, but at one point I asked myself, am I interacting with my kid or about to discipline my kid because of the onlookers? Do I owe the onlookers or the people who are witnessing this something, or is this about my kid? Is this about me and my kid and what I know and understand about my kid? So if they freak out, but I know they struggle with something, I got to have the flexibility and the grace for them in that moment to be teachable, to stay calm, to do whatever the case, and not just respond to somebody else so I can show I'm in control of this, right? Because that's what it used to be about. And I had to learn those things as I grew more into being a father. And I definitely don't have it all together, man, not by a long shot, but these are things I'm just learning and looking at and trying to input into my parenting. And I went back to my older son. I apologized, like, man, some of these things you needed from me, I wasn't offering them. I didn't have that skill set, or I didn't have that in my parental bag. I'm going to do better with you as the parent of a young adult versus how I did as a teenager, because I didn't understand all what comes with my first teenager, or I didn't understand what comes with anxiety or with hyperactivity, but now I do, and I'm going to try to do a better job at it. So I would encourage many dads, man, to understand what each of their kids go through, and if there's any difference with them, and then educate themselves and increase their skills on how to do a better job of parenting each individual kid based on what they need from you.
Yeah, it's definitely not a one size fits all.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely not.
And especially when you're parenting and then all of a sudden your first kid hits teenager, you got to learn how to parent all over again. Like, it's a different parenting skill set from having young kids to having teenagers, and then also having young adult kids. And some of those things, or those traumas in your life, or those early mindsets, you won't realize you come face to face with them when you're looking at an adult son in the face or an adult daughter in the face versus a young kid. It's just a different ball game. So we gotta increase our bag. We gotta increase our skill as parents. So one thing I'd love to say, I know we're doing kind of Q&A, but one thing I will be remiss if I didn't say here, because it was probably one of the most revolutionary things as a parent that I heard over the last couple of years, and it's helped me tremendously, and it's helped a lot of people that I've talked to tremendously. And I'd love to just mention it here, outside of the format that we're in. I was worried about My older son in the situation, he was 11 hours away from home. And, you know, me being a dad, I'm worrying about, is he okay? And is he going through this or that? Again, I know he struggles with some anxieties and some things. And so I was just worrying, you know, as a parent. And someone said to me, they said this phrase, and it changed a lot. They said, man, don't you know God doesn't have any grandchildren? All he has is kids. All he has is children. Just like you're his son, my oldest son's name is Isaiah. Isaiah is his son. No different. It's like you can't do any more for your son than what his heavenly father is going to do for him. He trusted you to steward over him, you know, so you're not going to do any more for him than he's going to do. You just got to keep doing what you're supposed to do. You did a good job and trust that he's going to do that. Now, I say all that on the premise, again, of me being a believer. So I know everyone is not believers and all that. I love and trust and believe in God. And that's been a revolutionary turning point in my life. So that's impactful to me. So to be reminded that it doesn't matter if my son is 2 feet away from me or 2,000 miles away, at the end of the day, I'm not his ultimate authority, and I don't have the closest relationship with him. It's his heavenly father. And so, man, that let me off the hook from worrying myself to death a lot of nights and a lot of times on certain stuff. You know, it's like God doesn't have any grandchildren. He doesn't have any pass-through relationships that he has to rely on. He has direct access and direct love for your son, just like he does for you. Y'all are both his sons. So that really, really helped me. And man, that changed a lot in how I worry about my kids or how I think about things, and just remember that everything is ultimately not in my control. And you know, I don't have to bear that weight all the time as a parent. And I know a lot of time parents do. They bear that weight when their kids are distant from them, or they bear that weight when their kids is, you know, struggles with anything and whatever. But, you know, it's not all your weight to bear. So I just want to share that.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah. So really what you just said made me think about my next question for you. And it's like, you know, John 3:16, right? That's
Right.
kind of like one of the most famous, you know,
Right.
From the Bible.
Right.
So do you feel like you've had to sacrifice anything for your children?
Man, I think parenting is the ultimate sacrifice. I think parenting is like 90% sacrifice and 10% everything else. So a good parent knows how to be a good sacrificer. You sacrifice your time, you sacrifice your resources, you sacrifice your position. You know, again, that understanding, okay, if there's a stalemate here, maybe I'll take a step back. That's new parenting. That dads didn't take a step back. Dad pushed you back, right? There are some times where there's a moment, and I'm right. I will be rightful in my correction. I have to pause. And right now, I'm going to go for anger and discipline, but that's not going to get the job done that I really want to get done. What if I come back in the morning, still cover the same things, and say, man, and I also got used to saying, recognizing my kids when they hurt my feelings. And I was disappointed in that. Oh, man, this hurt my feelings. And we come back and talk. And instead of going for a discipline moment, I go for a teachable moment. I started getting better results out of that, you know. So I think that, and that's a sacrifice for me. That makes me swallow my pride. That makes me do some things. So I think parenting is a ton of sacrifice. I looked each one of my kids in the face and I said, I will not pay for you to go to college. Pause. You are intelligent enough and you're athletic enough to go earn a scholarship. And I told them with enough lead time that they're well aware and they get on it. My sacrifice is all the coaching, all the pay, this amount of money for that, this amount of all the investment. I expect a return on investment. You don't owe me anything. I just want to put you in the right situation to earn. Like my son, when he enrolled early in Baylor, like, hey, I did my part. Now you can go be a tall, handsome, clean, never touched the field, master in medicine in 4 years or whatever, or now you can take this and go try to get in the NFL or whatever. But I've done my part, which is get you here on a 4-year NLI, ready to, you know, get all the education you can and take on the world, right? So yeah, I sacrifice to get them to that point, and I think parent is just the ultimate sacrifice. But I think also one of the places that we miss it in terms of men, and I know we're talking about parenting, but a major backdrop to this is as a husband, right? So I've also looked my kids in the face and said, you are not my first priority. Pause. Your mom is, my wife. Now I gotta understand, I gotta be better at it. I gotta be a better husband. But I'm not the best husband by a long shot. But I've said in my mind and I've announced to my kids, you guys are a gift to our marriage. So at some point, you guys are gonna go off on your own and do your own thing. You're gonna go cleave to somebody else. But me and your mom are it. I've had to look at my sons and said, hey, before this was your mom, this is my wife. So in other words, I'll jack you up over my wife. Like, watch what you say and what you do, right? Because you just know her as mom, but this is my wife. So the same way I'll do another dude off the street, you might fall into that category if you are a threat to my wife. And then they had the most puzzling look, but they understood it. And I hope they feel the same way about their wife, because we've always taught them biblically and we've always taught them, tried to teach them the right way. So yeah, the sacrifices are there, but if your sacrifices are grossly over what they are as a husband, if your priorities and all that are about your kids, even as a mom, if your mom is like, my kids is, if the mom is like, my kids is all this, whatever, and my husband fall back, I got to take care of my kids, whatever, that's out of order. That's the priorities are off. So yeah, make a gross sacrifice for your kids, because they force themselves as a, because you're responsible for them and they have a need, they force themselves as a priority. But if you lose the fact that your spouse is your ultimate priority, then you're going to be jacked up, especially when the kids leave the house and they vacate the premises. And now you're looking at a stranger, because for the last 24 years, we've been invested in something that had nothing to do with us. And now that they're gone, we don't have any definition of why we're together. So don't sacrifice so hard that you over-sacrifice your first important covenant, which is your marriage.
How would you say being a dad has helped you as a husband?
Man, the love part of it is tough. I remember my kids being younger and my wife was like, hey, they want you to tuck them in bed, right? Like they want to go lay down. They want you to pull the covers up over them and they want you to give them a kiss. And that was the toughest, man, that was like the toughest thing ever, just because I didn't understand what that was. I never felt it. And then when I did it, it felt kind of weird, but my wife had to be the person that pointed that out to me. My wife told me. So my wife has definitely helped me to be a much better, dad and all that and husband. But, the things you learn with your kids, and you try to have a balance, you always got to remind yourself, if I'm going this hard for my kids, I got to go even harder for my marriage. If I'm sacrificing in this manner, I got to keep it balanced on this side. So if I would say, if anything, it helps with the balance. And it just helps remind you, man, that it takes teamwork sometimes to make it work, to make it happen. That's why I'm so, I'm reading a book this year called Fathered by God. One of the other revolutionary things I've done this year, I believe for me, Fathered by God by John Eldridge. And it helped me understand the idea of the incomplete man. So all of us were designed to be ushered into manhood by our dad or another male. Many of us didn't, because we're in a broken home, a home where the dad wasn't there. So there was no balance. There was no ushering into manhood by another male, unless you had an uncle or a mentor that did that. And so most of us as men are incomplete and out of balance. And so that's where a lot of my thought is this year on talking with men and some of those other things. We miss several steps in being ushered into manhood, and we can never, we'll still be incomplete unless we go back and fill those gaps, right? So part of my out of balance is helped balanced by my wife, where I don't have some of those balances and I can't offer them to my kids. My wife helps with that balance and helps teach me, that there's a deficit or there's a void there. So we're able to walk through it together and get the sacrifices and get the relationships right. Again, we don't do it, we don't master it. There's always ups and downs. I have my moments, but at the end of the day, again, I see progress and I'm seeing getting better. I talk a lot about parenting with grace. A lot of grace was missing from some of my earlier parenting. I'm trying to make sure I parent and I coach with a lot of grace. I try to always remind myself that all kids are not made the same. Even my 4 kids in my home, they need a different thing from each person. So that requires you to be more skillful. That requires you to be more tuned in. That requires you to be more flexible or whatever is needed, because it's not all on the kid. A lot of it is on the father, and you're built to handle it. You're built to do it. I talked to some men that have kids with ADHD just because of understanding what that dynamic is, especially when anxiety is a part of it. And man, it can be overwhelming. But I remind them, man, you built for this. Like, God put you in this position to steward this kid because you can do it, and not because you don't have it. But it's going to break something else out of you, and that's the tough part. That's the hard process. You can do it, but you don't feel like you can because a part of this you haven't broken out. But that's what this process for is. It's not just for the kid; it's for you. A lot of this stuff is always double-edged. It's you're helping someone or you're doing something, but it also breaks something out or elevates something inside of you. So I'm trying to be mindful of that as I go through these processes, to be patient and to try to make sure, I can get the right thing out of these processes that are coming through. And generational curses and dysfunction are a big topic when we're talking about parenting, because I believe generational curses are real. I believe there are things in our family's bloodline and inheritance that have rolled down for generations that we have to deal with. And then we can't overlook any of the dysfunction we had from a broken home or from an abusive relationship. So many men have been sexually abused. You'd be amazed. No one is talking about it, but there are a ton of people. I was in a group of 25 guys talking, and 18 of the 25 men talked about being sexually abused. It blew my mind. I had no idea that would have been the case. And it's all different, but it all has a different impact. So all of those things, believe it or not, add into how you parent, and how balanced you are and how flexible you are to manage another human life, So again, there's a lot of stuff there,
Yeah, I know that you said that you tried to parent your children differently, or you like tried to parent based on their different personalities. But did you have like a favorite child? Whenever you
Man, with the cliche answer, man.
That's
he
a
was the
setup
cookie
right
cutter. They all my favorite.
That's a setup right there. Yeah, you can't play that card no different than all of my kids is the favorites. All of them, I love them the same. They just all different, man. They all bring something different to the table. I can say there's some need less than others. Others need a little more. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. I was hearing some lady who was talking one day, and it's a general mindset for some people, but they were like, baby, when you're 18, you're going to get out of here. We've heard that before, right? You grown, you're going to get on out of here. You got to go. Yeah. But I recognize some of my kids are going to may lead a little different than that. And that's okay. As long as you're on a pathway, as long as you understand the respect of our home, as long as you got a goal and we're helping you through it, I want to help you with what you need. I'm not going to preset a limitation or preset what I'm going to do based on, and all my kids are different. My one daughter, she's off living in Dallas, has a job, and she's starting out, she's on a pathway. One of my other sons is a year older, but he's still in school, and he was working, but that football itch was still bugging. I'm like, hey man, let's get your health check. If you're good, go run at your dream. Go do what you're going to do. Get it out of your system, man. We're going to support you. We're going to do whatever you need to do, because you can't come back to this. And as a parent, we have to sacrifice and say, man, I'll underwrite you for another year or two, because I know what it means to not have your not have your tank emptied, right? Someone said the other day, and I agree with it, I don't want to die with seeds still in my pockets, or unmanifested dreams still in my heart, or whatever. So if my kids have dreams or have whatever they need, I want to help them run at them. I want to help them try to tackle them. So all of them are different. I love them all the same. Some of them require a little more. Some of my heart beat a little different if a phone rings, if a phone call comes in terms of what's on the other end of it. But I wouldn't trade any of them, because they've all helped me to be who I am, and God gave them all to me for a specific reason. So, they all, that my as Sir Royce said, that my cookie cutter is, they're all the same. I love them all the same. On my insurance policy, if me and my wife go down, if me and my wife headed to Jamaica, we both go down, it's 25, 25, 25 for all the 4 kids. It ain't no big numbers or small numbers.
Great answer.
Which one of your kids is most like you, and which one of your kids is the least like you?
It's funny it's funny because they have moments where they're all the most like me in certain ways. My youngest son, Elijah, if I'm being honest, probably has a closer personality than me when I was his age, because we're both silly, we're both highly entertaining. We there's not an audience we're afraid of, and people like being around us because we can be the clown of the day. So he's like that, and like that in me, and some of the vanity, he's feeling himself right now because we got his little muscles and his little six pack or whatever. So he's allergic to all his shirts, So I remember going through that phase when I first freshman, sophomore year in college, when my body started to change. I was like, okay, yeah, so he's that like me in that regard. Most of them have my sense of humor in some way or another. Some of them are quiet like me. I mean, all of them carry certain characteristics the way I am. As they just show it all in different ways, and so I think that it's spread out across them evenly.
All right, cool. I know we getting close to time, and I know you're handling business right now, so we don't want to keep you from that. So I have one last question. So, like, when it's all said and done for you, what would you want your wife and your children to say about you?
Man, that he was a good man. I told my sons, I said, man, if I'm on my dying bed, and if I could say one last thing to you, I would say, man, be a good man. I know that's kind of vague, and it leaves some to a certain interpretation, but at the end of the day, your name is more important than anything else. The Bible says your name is more important than silver and gold. What have you done to be good? What have you done for others? What have you done to have an impact on people other than yourself? And there's so many shady people. There's so many characters. There's so many misrepresentation, especially as Black men. There's so many misrepresentations of us. Don't be the guy that adds to that. Be the guy, that revolutionary, that makes the hard pivot, that makes the hard repent against what the stereotypical person that looks like you. You got your dreadlocks, you got your tallness, your body, whatever. But at the end of the day, you're literally an asset to every situation you walk into. You're literally a blessing to people that you impact and that you come in contact with. You're trusted, and your favor impacts other people. You put yourself in a position to be generous, put yourself in a position to care, be an encourager for those that are even encouragers. I like to encourage the encouragers. So like you guys have a platform, you're doing something positive, but it doesn't mean that you don't have the regular distractions and ails of life. So I want to say, man, well done. Congratulations, man. Keep pushing and keep bringing this content, keep doing the things that you guys are doing because it's needed. And we have such a margin to recoup. We have such a deficit to close because there have been so many years where homes have been broken, so many years where the fathers have been missing. There's so many incomplete men that look like us that are walking around. And how do we close that gap? How do we help that deficit? And we got to have a multiplier effect that helps us gain ground, that helps us catch up. I think that someone mentioned this, and I remember it. I think the ESPN analyst, I think his name is Chris, I forget the name, the light-skinned guy from Louisiana. And I think he said, he had a quote that says, one of the most revolutionary things that a Black man can do is get married, is fall in love, get married, and build a home and stay in that home and keep it whole. Like, in other words, rebuilding homes and solid, stable homes, what we didn't have for mass majority of our time, will help revolutionize our position and what we do going forward. Because our sons need us, our daughters need us, our communities need us, but it's enough jokers out there. We need some good, solid, trustworthy, generous, fundamentally sound, led by some higher power that keeps them level and on track men that are helping us to go, into the future.
That's good stuff. Yeah. And my last question is a question I already asked you, Terrance, and you gave a good answer. I'm going to read it to you. I asked you, what does fatherhood mean to you? And you said the cornerstone of the family, opportunity to steward good citizens, and the most important piece to the community culture, post-childbirth. Can you elaborate on that a little more?
Yeah, and I think that was kind of reiterate. I'm glad it matched what I just said, like in my closing thing. So yeah, the cornerstone of the family, man. Imagine the family so many years without its cornerstone. You know, the visionary, the leader. You know, the person that should be, you know, having a heavy impact on the family. You know, and being able to carry that forward in the right manner. And, you know, the family starts first and then it goes out into the community. With a strong family, strong household, you have a strong community. You know, with a strong community, you have a strong church and you have a strong, everything else you need. You know, before, you notice I ain't said government yet. It starts with the home. If the home is strong and solid and the community is strong and solid and the churches are strong and solid, those things, I mean, you're going to get everything you need from that core. But when the home is distraught, when the home is broken, when the home is not in order, the other things are going to be out of order as well. So I definitely stand on that, and I believe that, you know, some of the things I'm learning at 46, I wish I would have known at 18, 19, but we can now put the information out there for the younger generation and try to get them started on a better path more quickly. Find one woman, love her, build a home with her. You know, you ain't got to be all over the place. You know, I remember people asking me questions about promiscuity. They weren't asking me about building a home or being, you know, telling me about good values, you know, so we need to start spreading that word. You know, I was watching Toby Nwigwe, and, you know, rap artist from Houston, and he just has this whole artistic vibe about him. He has a whole statement, but one of his lyrics in his song, because everything he does is with his wife and with his younger kid. And he's like, if you book me and I can't bring my wife and kids, don't book me, you know? So he's trying to put out a message that to revolutionize the hip hop industry that says, hey man, I'm from the neighborhood. I still talk my little talk, but I'm also about building a home and building something. He's talking entrepreneurship. He's talking building the brand, and he's talking my family being rock solid at no expense, you know, at no cost. My family is going to be straight. So that's what we need to spread, that type of word, so we can get that cornerstone back in place and build great families.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, this has been great, man. Dr. Young, what do you think, man? I think this is another one, man. Another classic, another Hall of Famer. What you think, man?
Yeah, it's a Hall of Famer. Hall of Famer for sure.
Terrance,
I appreciate it, man.
What was your jersey number, man? I gotta make sure I hang up the right jersey, man.
Man, I don't know. Track, we didn't have jerseys. I think when I was playing basketball, I was 50, but I ain't go forward in basketball, man. I was track. But no, I appreciate it, man. I'm so glad I got the opportunity to meet with you guys. I'm on a call every Monday nights called Where Men Hurt. It's just a small group of guys that started in the barbershop. We just have open, safe space for men to talk. And I tell them, man, I said, man, these brothers from Chicago, man, I was on their call and they had some sharp cats on there, man. They were doing some good stuff. So Andrew Landry is over that group, Where Men Hurt. Again, it's just a great place for men. You know, it's just a conversational group. And then also one of the gentlemen on there, his name is Donald Morton, and he has a project out of Delaware called the Remand Project. And it's just trying to help men, you know, recoup missed potential, you know, and help build good men and help them find that sweet spot between entrepreneurship, being a husband and father, and being a man, you know, that just being able to find that great area where you don't sacrifice for any of it, but you have it all. So yeah, I love, man, getting connected with groups and people and men that are pushing forward the right direction. I'm learning so much, and I'm so inspired. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, for sure, man. I appreciate you taking the time out and sharing your story, man. Yeah, you definitely have a unique story. I'm glad we were able to talk about it and put it out there. I think it's going to give a lot of people a lot of gems to pick up. You know what I mean? You left a lot of gems in this one.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
No problem. I'm trying to discipline myself to start writing some books. In my iPhone, I got so many book titles, and I just got to start disciplining myself to start working on it. I think there's some stuff there to be shared. I think the testimony is important. So, yeah, I hope that's part of my future.
And if you wanted to have anybody reach out to you, what would be the best place to reach out to you?
Man, I'm not too wide on social media. I'm just on Facebook, Terrance Bean. You know, I'm on LinkedIn, Terrance Bean. That's really, you know, I'm kind of a fuddy-dud that way, but you know, I'm just simple. I don't have the Instagrams and everything else, but you know, I'm on Facebook and I'm on LinkedIn. So I'm starting to think about, you know, doing maybe just a couple videos and and put some things out there. If I do, I'll probably expand. The one I'm working on right now is called Can You Fight? And it's this whole premise of, as men, we're functional and we can fight physically, but when the spiritual battle come to us, or when the emotional battle come to us, you know, we're typically usually not as strong or not as motivated to fight as if someone's kicking at our door, right? So can you fight in that other regard? And so I want to start trying to dig into myself and put some short content out there that can help other people.
Yeah, that's great, man. Definitely looking forward to that. Dr. Young, did you have anything else before we wrapped it up?
No, no other questions or anything. Again, I just wanted to thank you, Terrance, for doing this for us. I really had a good time in this interview. This was probably one of my favorite ones so far. I look forward to speaking again, man.
All right, I appreciate it, man. Sir, man, keep me on those things. I want to, again, you know, sometimes you invite people and they don't come. I promise you, those Thursdays were just a conflict of time, but I want to continue to be a part of it and get invites with things that you guys are doing, and I'll definitely participate where I can. So I appreciate it and keep up the great work.
Yeah, for sure, man. Definitely will keep you in mind, brother. And don't hang up. I know you're busy right now, but we could do a small little post game after this, man.
Okay, all right.
For myself, for Sir Royce Briales, for my co-host, Dr. Raheem Young, and also for our special guest, Terrance Bean. Thanks for listening to WTF Interviews, and stay tuned for further announcements.